Wakes up from his coma to find to his horror there was a furry beast beside him, was licking his face. He shuddered with fear. He turned his head to look, only to find it was just a sweet, gentle goat. After making sure there was no danger, Mark breathed a sigh of relief, pulling off his broken goggles to see where he was. But when he saw what was in front of him, he nearly fainted again as his eyes widened in horror. On the bare cliff, Mark was like a tiny ant, trapped a dozen meters from the top. Beneath his feet were bottomless cliffs and billowing clouds. The height is at least 1,000 meters. Mark looks up in despair to find his parachute. It was stuck in a dead tree. It looks like it could break at any moment. It was an emergency. Mark didn't have time to think. He turned around and tried to save himself. He touched the cliff face with his hand. He found that it was not rock. Instead, it was a thick layer of mineral salt that was very soft. So Mark had an immediate idea. First he drew his dagger. Then he took off his shoe. He stabbed the dagger into the shoe, through the tip of the shoe, to make a simple hiking boot. And then, Mark pulls 2 more daggers from his chest. Then he swung up into the air with his legs and used his inertia. He thrusts the daggers into the cliff face. And so, on his hands and knees, climbing upwards with difficulty. It's a tough way to go, but as long as there are no accidents, he can slowly climb to the top of the cliff to save his own life. Unexpectedly, Mark had just climbed 3 or 4 meters. The thin dagger couldn't bear his weight. Suddenly it broke in two. Mark's feet were empty and slid straight down the cliff face, back down to where he started. Worse still, with this tumble, the already fragile dead tree begins to break at the roots. He was about to fall into the abyss with his parachute. At the moment of death, Mark's potential exploded. He turns around. He pointed his toes at the cliff face, with a dagger in his hand, frantically cutting the parachute cord. Finally, just in time for the fall of the dead tree, he managed to cut the parachute, escaping with his life. However, survival was only temporary. Without his parachute in place, Mark can't do anything but cling to the cliff face. When his strength runs out, he'll fall off the cliff to his knees.